And we're live. And Holly's last words before we went live, and I quote, were, "It's too much. It's terrible." And by this, she was referring to the proliferation of cactuses. Yes, folks, somebody walked into my office at the Brookings Institution entirely unsolicited and gave me a cactus. And the cactus, it turns out, has been living at the Brookings Institution for a while. And let me tell you the story of this cactus. Um, this was given to me by, I don't know if this person wants to remain, be acknowledged, so we didn't discuss whether I should name her, so I'm just going to take a precaution of not doing it. But is one of the finance people at the Brookings Institution. And this person informed me that the software that they use, uh, uh, when you submit everything and it's all correct, sends you an image of a cactus. And this is entirely unexplained. And so there's a joke among the finance people that when somebody does something right with all the finance, you give them a cactus. And so this cactus was purchased as a joke so that you could walk into somebody's office and say job well done, or, all the financial data is complete by presenting the person with a cactus. And apparently the joke was very funny at first among the finance people, but then has gotten, jokes have shelf lives, except the joke about the cactus.
There's no shelf life. It just gets worse.
Right, it just gets worse. Um, uh, um, so this cactus has been, basically living on the shelf at Brookings for quite a while. And this particular person heard that we make celebrities out of cactuses on the show. And so she walked into my office and presented it to me. Um, and so I'm just saying, look, the cactus, and you will see in today's Dog Shirt Daily, which has been momentarily delayed by the need to check something with a source, um, uh, um, the estimable E.J. Wittes does have a long discursive history of the use of collective nouns in English, and there's a poll about what collective noun we should use to refer to a large group of cacti. But in any event, I do, as Holly noted before the show began, there is a few things that are different about this cactus. And the first, of course, is that this cactus has a tag. And Holly and I, after much discussion of the matter, have decided that the tag will remain on.
I don't remember. I don't think I had a huge input in this. I think you decided.
Well, do you disagree? Do you think we should make the...
Believe it or not, I don't have a strong opinion.
All right. Well, after my diktat and Holly's weary assent, the cactus tag will remain on. But the second and more interesting thing about this cactus is that the eyes are different. And Holly noticed this. I didn't. All the other cactuses have plastic bug eyes. And this cactus has, you can see them up close, embroidered eyes. It's kind of
classy.
It's classy. And
very Etsy.
So, we don't know how many cactus varietals there may be. But there are still more cactuses to come, because there's a cactus that has arrived in Washington from Riga with my name on it. And there is, of course, Mrs. Cactus, which is somewhere, over either the Atlantic or the Pacific Ocean on her way here by August 25th. Anyway, we are I have more things to say this morning, particularly about the about Holly's book, which I am in the process now of reading, and so in an effort to get those of you who have not yet ordered Holly's book to do so, I have a few thoughts about the introduction, which I read last night. And I'm just going to give, whenever Holly's on the show, and I'm making my way through the um, through the different parts of the book. I'm just going to talk about what I read last night. But that is after the chorus of cactuses does its thing,
If I can.
because the sun is shining, sort of. That's like glinting through. The birds are chirping. It's gonna be a great frickin' day. And
This is getting more and more complicated.
yeah, we got to coordinate three now.
You're watching Dog Shirt TV, a forking revolution in morning television.
You are watching Dog Shirt TV, and it is a forking revolution in morning television. And one of the revolutionary features, Holly says this thing is getting out of control, but she won an important battle. The cactuses all say forking, not
Well,
fucking.
I would say Jonathan Rauch won an important battle.
Yeah, but I think I had the resurrected cactus saying, not just saying fucking, but really emphasizing the word, and you toned it back to the Rausch approved language, and this cactus is now trained to. I guess this is like like Nicene Creed of the cactuses or something. And anyway, one of the revolutionary features is that we don't use the word fucking on this show anymore. We say forking.
We feel like saying fucking.
Except when we feel like saying fucking. And another one of the revolutionary features, and this is really revolutionary, this is the only dog shirt I own where the dog is upside down, or a dog is upside down.
And abstract.
Yeah. And so, all of which is a 7-minute long way of saying that we're not allowed to have fun anymore. But apparently we are allowed to have cactuses that mate and proliferate like bunnies.
I just have to say that how is it that we live in a world that can manufacture like so far 4 varieties of a talking, dancing,
No, we call them varietals.
Varietals of
Yeah,
a
because we're
talking,
classy here.
dancing, recordable cactus. But not only can we not, get Middle East peace, like, okay, but also like have you ever had a printer that works reliably for more than like a month? Because I have not, and don't even get Greek chorus and audience. Don't even start with your recommendations. I have taken people's recommendations, and it does not exist. It does not exist. So how is it we live in a world such as this?
Well, so
and yes, you do occasionally need to print something out.
yeah. So I, for example, needed to print something yesterday because I had I am applying for a permit on behalf of a bunch of Ukrainians to take a nap in the subway system in Washington, to bring attention to the fact that lots of Ukrainians sleep in the Kiev metro, and I don't want them to get arrested because a lot of them are here on TPS, and
Go to that protest.
well, we should have a permit today, assuming all goes well, because I printed out a document. But the thing about printing out a document is I do it so rarely that we have actually very little printing capacity at Lawfare HQ. And it took a little while to figure out how do we actually use our printer. But the printer did work. about as well as the cactus.
Yeah, and and I hope this is not classified, but the CIA printers also did not work reliably. And that you would think the CIA at least would have printers that work reliably. And there was always a problem with the printers.
Yeah.
Jams, the ink, the toner, just the connectivity. My printer here just will just say no. I don't feel, and there's no problem. There's no problem. And it's just like, yeah, I don't like it today. And then like 2 days later it'll start spitting things out that I put in there like 3 days ago to print. Anyway,
Yeah, I try never to print anything, but
I try
occasionally,
never, but sometimes you have
I
to.
have to.
You
Yeah,
have to.
it's
Yeah.
an issue. So,
Anyway, that's not interesting. But did you have an agenda today? I have a couple items.
okay, let's go with your items.
Well, first of all, I did some investigative journalism yesterday, as I said I would. And I went down to my local wine store, Arrow Wines, here in Arlington, Virginia. Love Arrow Wines and cheese. They have a lot of cheese. They have a lot of goodies in that store, not just wine. And now, granted, they don't ever stock a whole lot of South African wine, but they always have, like maybe 5 varieties. And they had some new ones today that I was not familiar with, or yesterday rather. And they were on sale. So I got a couple bottles of South African wine. And then I talked to Shem, whose role at the store I did not. I'm not that good of a journalist, so I didn't get his specific full name and whatever role or whatever. But he was very knowledgeable, and we talked about the tariffs. And then another customer wandered over and joined our conversation. And anyway, I don't think he wanted to break my heart because I mentioned specifically South African wine, and of course he reminded me, as I already knew, that they don't get a lot of South African wine. I was like, fair enough. Most of their wines come from Europe. But I asked him, are you still going to be getting South African wine? And he said, of course, it may be, more expensive, but yeah, we will. And I'm thinking like, no, you're going to be done with that because nobody's going to buy the 30% marked up South African wine except for me. But he didn't say that. So anyway, we talked about their European wines, which apparently I didn't know. European wines have long been under a 10% tariff. Did you know this?
I think I think they've been under a 10% tariff, and now everything Europe is under a 15% or a 10% tariff. Is that right?
I'm fuzzy on the details because again, I'm not a real journalist. But Shem indicated that the tariff on the wine was going to go up. And so
Yeah, I think it goes up like 5%. I think
Yeah.
Europe gets 15% across the board now.
And Shem reminded me, as Shem understood what a tariff was and reminded me, which I did not need a reminder, but nonetheless, he said that, of course, it would get passed on to the consumer. And I said, well, I have 2 questions. First of all, are you going to change are you going to start stocking more Californian wines instead of European wines? And he said, he was like, no. First of all, he seemed very anti-California wine. So he seemed to really like European wines. And then he said, actually, and then he mentioned what you have mentioned to me before, which is that the tariffs, it's not just the wine. It's actually the barrels and all of the
glass
supplies.
And the corks,
all the supplies that go into it. And so he had talked to a Virginia winemaker. Actually, they sell Virginia wines, and asked them, what the outlook was for them. And they told him that their wines would all be going up in price because of the supply chain. And so he indicated that, he thought some of their suppliers and importers would absorb some of the costs, but
Right.
most of it would be passed on to the consumer.
So economics 101, guys.
Yeah, from Shem at Arrow
No.
Wine.
There's just when you have a tax imposed, this is true of all business taxes, and it's um, uh, as a general matter, there's some distribution effect between every level of the distribution chain and the end consumer, right? So if I say we're putting a 10% tariff on Holly's book, um, some portion of that the publisher is going to absorb and just take less profit. Some portion of that the bookstore is going to absorb, and some portion of that the distributor system is going to absorb, and some portion of that you are going to absorb. And as a general matter, businesses try to pass on as much cost as they can for obvious reasons because they're profit maximizers. Um, and um, and so that is the effect that you're seeing here. And different taxes have different pass on effects, which, um, uh, but generally, the more price sensitive something is, um, the when you're dealing with consumer goods, um, these are extremely, extremely price sensitive things, and so um, you can make a product non-viable pretty quickly by increasing its price marginally. And similarly, you can make it non-profitable pretty quickly because the profit margins on these things are not huge. If you just decide as a supplier to absorb the cost of it, you may wipe out your margin on these things. So these are price sensitivity is a real thing. And by the way, if you just think of increasing the tariff rate by 5% on European goods / wines, 5% is significantly higher than the target inflation rate, right? So expect the cost of European wines to go up more than the desired rate of inflation.
And apparently American wines as well. And then Shem also mentioned, of course, the immigration policies of the Trump administration and that impact on California wines. So anyway, Shem expected all the wines probably to increase in price, but I asked him if he was concerned for their business, and he was like, no, people are going to keep drinking. So
a couple things about that. A high-end wine store in Arlington,
Virginia
is the least tariff sensitive.
That's what Shem said.
Because you're dealing with high income people on a luxury good. And, for those who've never been to Arlington, Holly lives in a very nice neighborhood. There's a lot of, wealthy people there. The poor,
a lot of super wealthy, like way more wealthy than me.
Right.
The house is like the worst house.
The CIA analysts are the low end of the economic food chain.
And actually, if they didn't buy 15, 20 years ago, they ain't getting in here.
Right. And so, these are just like any price inflation. Any inflation hits rich people much less than it hits other people. These are highly, highly regressive taxes. But I will also say there is also, the addictive drug is, a bit less price sensitive for obvious reasons than other things.
Especially during these times. So now, one of the other customers that joined our conversation, so he had a particular knack for Bordeaux French wine. He was there. They knew, apparently this guy knew Shem personally, and which I can't say.
Where is Shem? Is Shem Israeli or?
Shem, I wouldn't speculate. He was, I would say he is he's naturalized he had an accent of some kind. I wouldn't speculate where, but he did appear to be maybe North African or Middle Eastern.
Okay.
maybe Lebanese. I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to like speculate about Shem, but he did, yeah. But he was very knowledgeable
Shem
and
means name in Hebrew, by the way.
he seemed to have been working there for a long time because this customer knew him personally, and vice versa. So the customer, so I asked the customer, like, was he going to be cutting back? And he said he might cut it back a little bit, but probably not. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
said, well, I will not be cutting back. In fact, I'm probably going to be increasing my drinking.
All right. More on tariffs from the wine store?
No, that was pretty much it.
Okay, my turn for an agenda item.
Okay, good.
Holly's book introduction. Okay, so there is this thing that those of you from Washington probably, it's a phrase that people have probably never heard, which is the Washington Read. And Washington reading is when you get a new book and you don't read it, you open the index and you look for your name and
The acknowledgement.
you read the parts that are about you. And I did not do that with Holly's book because Missionary Kids is a subject about which I have exactly no background or expertise, and so would not expect myself to show up in Holly's book. Though I am not above a good Washington read as a general matter, I didn't even look at whether there was an index in Holly's book. I just started on the first page, and
Acknowledgements first, though, because
I didn't. I didn't know that, and I still don't know that because I haven't gotten to the acknowledgments yet. I found myself on the first page of Holly's book. And not only did I find myself on the first page of Holly's book, I found the origin story of Holly and my relationship on the first page of Holly's book. And so I want
to... Are you a murderer?
No, I am not a murderer, but we met not the first time, but the first time we actually really substantively engaged with one another was you called me to consult about what laws might apply to this murderer. And so the book begins with this arresting comment that Holly has only really ever known one murderer in her life. And she hems and haws a little bit about how certain we are that he's a murderer. But if you read between the lines, it's pretty clear that she has no doubt that he murdered his wife and tried to blame
anyone else who was there at the time.
Right. And I suddenly had this flashback to, it's got to be 3 years ago now, or and I had met Holly, as you all know, because she scored me and Sarah Longwell an invitation to the French embassy for a French Village podcast party. But then she got in touch probably a couple years later because she was writing this book. And she wanted to talk about jurisdictional issues that may affect missionary murderers.
And actually sexual abuse of
children, abuse.
Which that comes later.
And so everybody else in the world is going to read this opening vignette, which is about this murderer that Holly used to call Uncle, because little missionary children are supposed to call all adults uncle and aunt if they're missionaries.
Big happy family.
One big happy family, even if they're murderers. And she has this passing line. There are, I don't have the book in front of me, which was bad of me. I should be holding it up. That there are jurisdictional issues that may encumber the prosecution of people, American murderers abroad in U.S. courts. And that sentence was my Washington read of Holly's book, because I read that sentence and said, that sentence is how Holly and I know each other. And so I thought I would begin my unpacking of Holly's book for you all by just pointing out that now everybody who watches this show will know to read the jurisdictional discussion, brief as it
And there's
is.
more later in the book.
Oh, okay. I haven't gotten to that part yet. The jurisdictional discussion of the uncle murderer is the origin story, or at least a good chunk of it. It's of Holly and my relationship. So I don't know what it says about us that we bonded over the French Village podcast and jurisdictional bars to murder by missionaries and sexual abuse by missionaries. But if you want to find me in Holly's book, which you shouldn't, because the book is really has nothing to do with me.
You're in the acknowledgments.
Apparently I'm in the acknowledgments. This is the secret code that will give you. I was Holly's consultant on murderous uncles and their extradition. All right. For a serious point on the book, I want you all to read this introduction. This is, Ev and I were having this discussion about process in writing books. And Holly does something in the introduction here, which I think she didn't think about, but she does something that is incredibly important in a book introduction, and that many, many, many people who write nonfiction books fail to do, which is to establish right up front why the subject of the book is important. There are many, many reasons for me not to read.
That's what that is. That's called CIA analyst training.
There are many, many reasons for me not to read a book about missionary kids. I am not a Christian. I have no particular interest other than Holly in missionary culture.
Except that you're going to hell and you probably need a missionary.
Well, but that's not really a reason for me to read about missionaries. It's really a reason for someone to do a mission to me. Okay. But a book that is going to get me to read about missionary kids actually has to persuade me to do it. This is not voluntary. If you don't do this, people will not read it.
I thought you meant reading my book was not voluntary.
No, actually it is.
For you, it's really not. I mean, if I'm going to do your podcast, you're going to read my book. No, I've spent hours on this podcast.
Okay, I have to have pretended to read your book.
Okay, good.
Right? But there are many ways to read a book. And I am very skilled at reading a book without reading it.
Yeah, me too.
And I do podcasts with people where I've spent 20 minutes reading their book, and they think I've read their book.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to get away with not reading your book, I could get away with not reading your book.
Yeah.
And so it is not a question whether I will read in your book, but it is a question, it's always a question how deeply you're going to read something. Holly's introduction, from the first sentence to the end of the introduction, makes a case for why you should read the book. And so if you were interested in my discussion with Ev the other day about process of writing a book, take a look at this document. It's like 12, 13 pages. It's short. See, I know how many pages it is. If you look this up, you're going to find it's like 14 pages or something. I'm not going to be off by more than 2 here. How did I do? 18? Actually,
a little long. Ideally, you want your introduction shorter.
But... No, you want your preface to be short. Your introduction should be a meaty document, and it needs to make the case for the book. So that's my agenda item. First of all, pay particular attention to the isolated sentences there that are about jurisdiction, criminal jurisdiction, and missionaries, but also take a look at the case for why you should read about missionary kids. Okay, Holly, your turn.
Oh, yeah, I did a little, if you're on any of the socials, yesterday I did a post, kind of basically directly, on like why, if you're not from an evangelical background, why would you want to read this book? And so there's a few different slides on Instagram, and I reposted elsewhere. But I think the last slide kind of summarizes it. Ultimately, this book isn't a niche story about the lives of missionary kids or the work of missionaries. It's about how overseas missions have shaped white evangelicals' sense of divine destiny and helped create a narrative in which they are always and everywhere the good guys who believe they need to control America. And that is relevant to everyone. So
Yeah.
there you go.
I think this is a powerful through line of the introduction, and I assume the book itself, that I've actually never thought about before, like how the missionary culture relates to the overseas missionary culture relates to the domestic entitlement to rule that we all see in 100 infuriating ways, as well as some endearing ways, by the way. Um, uh, and so I just think it's a very powerful standalone essay that has a persuasive argument that you should proceed to chapter one, and that is a really effective. Uh, it's really an essential device in most books, unless they're about unless they're about something you already know you are deeply interested in. Um, uh, and like other than Taylor Swift, there aren't those issues, like the books that are, going to be self-evidently interesting to me are not the same books that are going to be self-evidently interesting to Holly. And there aren't that many subjects other than Taylor Swift whom there are just, it is self-evident to a gazillion people that they want to know about this. Um, and so the introduction, the burden, accepting the burden of persuasion that you want to read something, invest your time in reading it when you could be, watching porn or listening to, no, I'm just thinking like all the things that attract people's attention, right? And just objectively.
Kids watching porn.
I think there are probably a lot of people who were weighing that exact question. Um, you know, and
Probably, yeah.
and every moment that somebody spends on missionary kids is a moment that they are making a decision to be substantive about an issue that may or may not affect their lives versus being distracted by something transient, some meme, I didn't use porn there just flippantly. It actually diverts a lot of attention. You can support this with a lot of traffic data, like it actually diverts a lot of attention from other things, right? And we live in a distraction economy. John Hawkinson rightly puts in the chat doom scrolling Twitter. All social media, 98% of it fits into this category. There's a million ways to distract yourself. And in an environment in which you are competing with that level of distraction, you have to make a case, pay attention to this. Your turn.
Oh, to change the subject or to continue on this line or whatever I want to do?
Whatever you want to do.
Well, first of all, Jeff has suggested or inquired as to why Lawfare doesn't have a porn section, but I think Lawfare may have a porn section on just the legality of porn, or enforcing sort of porn. You probably have some porn content on Lawfare, I'm
Well,
guessing.
we have some lawfare porn. For example, let me give you an
What is
example.
Lawfare porn?
No, lawfare porn is like stuff that is, when people say like, you know, real estate porn, right? There's a kind of when lawfare um does something that's just going to be like, you know, candy to lawfare readers, right?
The Witoed article
The Witoed
was
article is
fantastic.
classic lawfare
Yeah.
porn. And Anna, speaking of Anna Bauer, actually had a beautiful bit of lawfare porn yesterday, which is a super detailed, hyper specific analysis of um, the Texas authority to drag back absentee
Love
legislators,
that.
and
Yeah.
and down to the what the Texas Supreme Court precedents are, from 1872 on
Gotta
this
look at
subject.
that.
Um, and um, these are things that we do that are, I would say, not um, they're not the sort of molten core of here is the relevant article. These are things that we do that are not uh, not the sort of core lawfare subject matters, right? We don't usually do, kind of um, uh, diarist columns about looking for the administrator of does, right? Like, we're doing them in a very self-conscious effort to be super super substantive in a lighthearted kind of way. And but yeah, that's the same thing as your introduction. That's an effort to say, okay, I'm going to persuade you to read about this, about who is the administrator of Doge, and I'm going to do it by being funny and by taking you through my own process of obsession. Um, uh, but I'm not going to pretend that that's like, a normal news article.
Cool. Anyway, great content there. Um, so speaking of great content, I wanted to flag. Did you happen to catch Tim Miller's interview with Andre Hernandez Romero, the makeup artist?
I have not seen it. Is it
So
on the main podcast feed?
it is not on the podcast. It's only, I think, because it has subtitles. He's Andre is speaking Spanish, and they subtitle it. So I think you have to watch the video. It's on YouTube. It's probably on their Substack as
I
well.
assume it's very upsetting.
It's actually quite uplifting. Really. I mean, this man is like just a very sweet spirit. It's just really remarkable, his grace and gratitude, and the he talks about the bonds formed with the others in prison with him. He talks about like he's some of them having gotten back to Venezuela are getting married, and he's going to be doing makeup for their brides, and it was really sweet. He actually did not get into the details of his treatment except in broad strokes because, as he explains, under the advice of his lawyers. So I assume that there's going to be some legal, or already are legal cases related to that. But he did indicate that he was sexually assaulted in prison, and there was other mistreatment there.
Yeah,
So
I mean, he is mercifully well represented. Actually, the woman
yeah,
who represents him is
yes,
a very serious attorney, and
seems like it.
I but he's been, for obvious and very legitimate reasons, a kind of one of the, along with Kilmar Abrego Garcia and a few others, the sort of face of the Sikot policy. But I think we gotta all remember that there are individuals in that population who were probably also treated really, really terribly and are not particularly individually well represented. And so, for when you watch that, and I will, video interview, just remember that there's nearly 300 of these people, and every one of them has a story, and not all of them are being interviewed by Tim Miller, because there's only so many people who care enough to do it, and only and so this is a particularly egregious case, but it's probably not an unusual case.
Yeah, he Andre took pains to mention the others, 252. He mentioned multiple times he mentioned the others. I do think there is I'm sure they're not, like, I saw Andre's particular attorney speak at a rally for him, and she was indeed incredibly impressive. I do think that there is a legal fund for the group as a whole, and there's some effort to take up other cases. But yes, Andre has gotten a lot of attention, including from Tim, because he's was really moved by his story, and just spent a lot of time not only bringing attention to his case, but also raising money for his
Right.
legal defense and so on. So
No, and
anyway,
with all Tim has been a absolute lion on this subject, and both on behalf of the cases that affect his particular community, but he's rightly never limited himself to that. And it's easy to get parochial and for everybody to focus on the communities that they're most concerned about, for totally legitimate reasons. Tim for the gay guy, me for the Ukrainians, right? I mean, we all have reasons to be particularly focused in this area, but Tim has been, I think, very admirable in never making it about Andre specifically, though he's concerned about Andre specifically, right? But always remembering that this is, this would be a lamentable accident if it were an accident rather than a policy.
yeah, and Andre's story makes it very clear that they intentionally moved them on a weekend, for instance. That there was a lot of, anyway, just he didn't even tell everything, but there was a lot of things that he did say that were just egregious and embarrassing. And then Tim, asked him, like, what does he feel about the United States now? And again, Andre was incredibly graceful and talked about how much he loves America and how much opportunity there is here, and how he, would love to return someday, and just all the way around. And then when asked about Donald Trump, he turned it into a whole, just for all of us to have more compassion, all of us, including himself, have more compassion and have more empathy for people. And he, he talked about, again, the bonds with the other prisoners forged in prison and how that helped them survive. And then it's clear also that he's a person of great faith in God. And he talked about, praying, prayer, and how that got him through. And the whole thing just struck me like, I grew up in evangelicalism. Andre was the poster boy for the devil's work, like a gay makeup artist, just like that's who we were told to fear, the gay agenda, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that was like Andre was like the boogeyman. And it's like, this man is more Christ-like than all of all of y'all put together, just tremendous grace and lack of bitterness. And again, gratitude for all those who have, pulled for him and loved him, and gratitude for even the opportunity to come to the United States. So anyway, it's a tremendous interview. It was the first time I personally had seen Andre speak. And, I had gone to the Bulwark events that they had organized for him and gone to protests. I was very proud of my sign I made for him about Trump's crimes against dermatology. But it was like, I was sort of advocating for him in the abstract, and just to see what kind of person he obviously is. I'm just really glad that he is home with his family. He has ongoing security concerns that he didn't talk about.
Well, Venezuela is not a safe place right now, and it is, any place where you have significant gang activity, significant repression, and a kind of economic catastrophe is not going to be a safe place for an effeminate gay makeup artist. And, that's why he was in the United States with a lawful pending asylum application.
He was. Yeah, absolutely. His case was pending.
And by the way, that's the kind of asylum application that we often grant.
Absolutely.
And there are some interesting issues around LGBT asylum applications, but those we often grant those. That's not one of the ones that you say, okay, he gets paroled into the country and then 7 years later he's going to be ordered removed. This is a completely plausible asylum application.
Yeah, because it's individual to him, and he did have evidence of again, personal. You have to make it. It can't just be a generalized. Like my country's dangerous. Like
Right.
It has to be personal, individualized case, and he did. I do believe he had that, and yeah. So his treatment egregious. Of course, he talked about why the accusations that he was in a gang based on his tattoos for his mom and dad. I mean, it's just like appalling. There's just no way on earth that this man is a gang member.
Right.
So anyway, I'm Andre and the others on behalf of this country. I think those of us who hate what this administration is doing on so many fronts, just so sorry, like and also like we continue to do what we can to stop this and to push back, both in our voting and our activism and just whatever we can. That's kind of what is a motivator for me. I'm just so deeply ashamed of my country. And I'm so apologetic and full of grief for all the people around the world who are harmed by what is going on, including just being in Africa and talking to my friend who works in Uganda with refugees who were all set to come after years of waiting. Congolese,
but those white
refugees.
South Africans that we admitted as
And then
refugees,
all of their cases were canceled, and then they see 59 white South Africans, waltz into the country with zero vetting. By the way, just like not even. They didn't even do a basic criminal check by South African accounts, according to the South African media. They didn't even do any kind of check of them, and I think it took 3 weeks total from the time they applied to the time they arrived at Dulles. And so my friend was talking about just the hopelessness of the people that she works with and tries to help in Uganda. And it's just like, what can you do, what can you say on behalf of your country?
Right.
So
amen to that. All right. I have one final agenda item before we adjourn. This has been a remarkably organized show, by the way. This going
Well,
back and
the
forth.
chat has commented on the emotional whiplash of cacti and printers and porn to murderous missionaries and human rights violations.
Well, I am for it.
That's life these days. That's life.
Veering between highly substantive and what even Ev and I call the inanities is an important thing. It helps you
Real
stay
life, man.
sane. All right. Here's my final agenda item, and it is an entirely serious one. And for me, an inspiring one. I had two inspiring meetings yesterday. One, which is not relevant to this conversation, was with a young Ukrainian whom I had never met before who reached out to me for job help. And I think I mentioned this yesterday that we had texted the previous evening and we met yesterday, and that was really cool. The other one was, and I'm just because it was not a public thing, I'm going to keep names out of it, but was with somebody who has been a senior editorial figure at a major publication, but whom I had never met before, and has been very involved in this idea of what if you build a business model of not around scale, which is, requires a lot of advertising, is highly sensitive to, what you might call news porn, and makes you a creature of the algorithm, but around community. And this person wanted to talk to me because there are a few publications that really do that. One in a sort of more macrocosmic way is The Bulwark, but another one is Lawfare, which does it in a kind of microcosmic way. And so she was kind of interviewing me about how we do it, and we got to talking, and over the course of a not very long lunch, I finally said to her, what you're describing is building a club on the basis of a subscription base of a magazine. But why don't you strip the magazine out and just build the club? And then many magazines can participate in it. We talked about what group, organizational membership, but also individuals could participate in it. And I told her I'd been doing this proto example of this for the last several years called First in Lieu of Fun, and then Dogshirt Daily, and that there is no actual good reason why 31 people should be watching this live and paying to do it, except for engagement with us and each other, which is to say the club aspect of it. And that you could build, if you wanted to organize some degree of physical presence, you would need like a clubhouse, i.e., the Cosmos Club or the Metropolitan Club without the suits and the snootiness. Some degree of no suits. Some degree of programmatic presence, i.e., think of a studio that's basically live streaming constantly, right? The people are having real conversations. There's some of the magazine or content providing organizational members are running programming for, and some degree of what we do, which is to say non-physical membership by people who are scattered around the world and who are bonded together by a sense of being interested in similar issues, but also a kind of democracy-centric worldview. And so I said, so imagine you combined the early Jacobin Club before it became a murder factory.
I hope you're
Um,
not going in that direction.
don't want to go in the murder factory direction, but if you look at the original concept of the Jacobin Club, which was, hey, a group of people who believe something should have a clubhouse and should debate the things they believe and then come up with ideation and bring that to the break, like that's what the original club was. Um, some degree of social club, some so there's some physical aspect, but there's also what we're doing here on Dog Shirt TV, which is a constant iterative dialogue with a membership, um, that may be local or may not be local, right? And so then that relates to what the Bulwark does with their live events. It relates to when Lawfare sometimes has live recordings of podcasts, right? And so my question to you all, and I'm going to ask, um, feel free to leave comments in today's Dog Shirt Daily whenever it goes live, which it will as soon as I hear from a certain source. Um, uh, um, Feel free to leave comments, and I'm specifically interested in the question of, would you want to be a member of such a club? I am thinking of, I told this person I would be willing to invest significant amounts of money in putting this club together. Um, Not Lawfare's money, my money. Is there, what would you, and if you're local in Washington, um,
Like with this, sorry, are you talking about a physical club?
I think it has a physical dimension, like
Okay, yeah,
somewhere
no,
where you
I would
could
pay
go,
money. Absolutely.
where you could go hang out with,
Yeah.
um, uh, you know, and talk to people, have a drink. So some element of physical club, some element of virtual online club, because we don't want it to be, most of the Greek chorus is not in the Washington area, right? Um, and so would you want to be a member of such a club, and what would you want from it? And if you're in Washington, or in the DMV, or it's something that you would use the physical dimension, what would you do? You want like a gym? Do you want a bar? Do you want a mostly physical events? What would you want from it if you're here? And then the other thing is, what
We
would
could
you
do
want?
art.
We could do art. What do you want from it if you're not here? So if you're one of the people who's on the other side of the world, we have Australians we have Israelis, we have people in a lot of different countries who engage. We have Finns.
You know what
Um,
it sounds like, Ben?
mhm.
It sounds like a secular church, which is
So
fine.
I'm the Church of Democracy. I mean,
That's right.
I like there's some communal, but I'm interested in both from the community that's scattered to the four winds, but also from the community that's here. What would you want in a club if we said we're combining a pro-democracy, a space for, and it would be, among other things, it would be have a physical space for places like the Bulwark or the Atlantic or Lawfare to do events. None of them have event spaces. We could create an event space. So what kind of services would you want locally if you're here?
Yeah, I
And
have so many ideas.
yeah, so we can talk about it separately, but and what kind of services would you want if you were not local, if you're abroad? So that is my very serious question that I'm serious enough about to potentially put up a lot of money to try to make happen. And I yesterday had, I think, a conversation with somebody who I had never met before, but who just impressed the shit out of me. And I think I changed her thinking about what she was trying to do. It was one of the most productive lunches and inspiring lunches I've had in a long time. Uh, and uh, and so I've told her I would potentially back this if she would be interested in running it. Um, and um, and so I'm super interested. You guys, the 30 of you plus the 1,000 of you who don't necessarily participate in the Greek course. It's actually more like 100 who participate in the Greek course. It's not the same people every day, but there are like 100 of you that watch, 1,000 or 2,500 of you that watch this. There's about 1,000 who pay to be part of this community, and there's about 100 who actively participated in the form of showing up sometimes on Dogshirt TV. I want to hear from all of you. What does the club, whether you think of it as a church of democracy, or whether you think of it as, Dogshirt TV IRL, or whether you think of it as a physical manifestation, a modern pro-democracy, non-murderous manifestation of the Jacobin Club. The Jacobin Club is a really horrible outcome, but if you study the original, what they were originally doing before they all became murderous psychopaths, and killed the others off. It's actually completely inspiring. The idea that you can have a social club and a political club that is like, this is a club for people, a physical club for people who, support constitutional democracy. So I want to hear from you about this. And please leave comments. I do read all the comments, and we are a minute over, and I try to end on time. So, folks, we're going to be back on Monday. Today's Dog Shirt Daily is going to contain a truly lovely piece of mischief and some fun material about it. And I hope you enjoy it.